Fear in Chicago's underworld didn't stem from its ruthless kingpin, but from his terrifying mother. Beatrice Park shattered hardened mobsters with an icy glare and destroyed any woman her son dared to love. Then came Maya, a waitress who didn't just serve black coffee, she served a harsh reality check. In the heart of Chicago, the Obsidian Room was where the city's power brokers came to break bread, forge alliances, and occasionally ruin lives over a plate of Wagyu beef. It was a restaurant dripping in dark mahogany, dim lighting, and dangerous money. Maya Hayes worked the floor with the kind of effortless grace that only came from years of surviving the service industry's trenches. She was a 26-year-old black woman who had put herself through college waiting tables, possessing a sharp intellect, a flawless memory, and an absolute intolerance for nonsense. She usually handled the main dining room, leaving the secluded VIP booths to the veteran servers who knew how to turn a blind eye to the briefcases exchanging hands. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, the restaurant's hierarchy collapsed. The Park family had arrived. Dominic Park was the undisputed head of the city's Korean-American syndicate. At 32, he was devastatingly sharp, notoriously ruthless, and commanded a sprawling empire of import-export businesses that served as a flawless front for his less savory operations. He was a man who could silence a room just by walking into it. But Dominic wasn't the reason the VIP waitstaff were currently hyperventilating in the kitchen. The true menace was his mother, Beatrice. Beatrice Park was a woman of terrifying elegance. Dressed in impeccable vintage Chanel, she carried herself like a queen, forced to endure the presence of peasants. She was infamous. Beatrice had a reputation for verbally dismantling anyone who crossed her path. She had driven 3 of Dominic's ex-fiancés out of the state, fired countless personal assistants, and was known to make grown men in her son's syndicate tremble with a single raised eyebrow. In the kitchen, Chloe, the designated VIP server, was in tears. She sent the water back 3 times. Maya, Chloe sobbed, clutching a pristine white napkin. She said the ice cubes were aggressive, and that I lacked the fundamental grace of a human being. I can't go back out there. Alex, the floor manager, looked like he was about to faint. Maya, please, he begged, his voice cracking. Just take the table. I'll double your tips for the night. I'll give you the weekend off. Just don't let her cause a scene. Maya sighed, untying her apron and swapping it for Chloe's pristine white service jacket. Aggressive ice cubes? Really? Maya shook her head, smoothing down her natural hair. All right, let me handle it, but you owe me, Alex. Maya walked out of the kitchen, her posture straight, her expression entirely neutral. She approached the secluded corner booth where Dominic sat in a tailored charcoal suit, massaging his temples, while Beatrice sat opposite him, looking thoroughly unimpressed with the world. Good evening, Maya said, her voice smooth and steady, devoid of the trembling deference the Parks were used to. I'll be taking over your service for the rest of the evening. My name is Maya. Beatrice's dark eyes snapped up, raking over Maya from head to toe. It was an autopsy of a stare. What happened to the weeping willow? Beatrice asked, her voice laced with ice. Did she finally realize she belongs in a fast food drive-thru? Chloe had another engagement, Maya replied smoothly, picking up the rejected crystal water glass. And it seems she couldn't quite master the art of pacifying your ice. I'll ensure the next batch is properly sedated. Dominic's head jerked up. His dark eyes locked onto Maya, wide with a mixture of shock and sheer terror. No one spoke to his mother like that. He braced himself for the explosion. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Are you mocking me, girl? I'm offering a solution to your problem, ma'am, Maya said, holding Beatrice's gaze without blinking. Now, I understand you prefer the pan-seared scallops, but the chef's special tonight is a black cod that pairs perfectly with the Bordeaux your son usually orders. It's delicate, requires no chewing, and won't insult your palate. Beatrice was silent for a long, heavy moment. The air in the booth felt thick enough to cut with a steak knife. Dominic subtly shifted his hand toward his pocket, instinctively ready to throw money at the situation to make the incoming screaming match go away. The cod. Beatrice finally snapped. And if it's overcooked, I will hold you personally responsible. Understood, Maya said, offering a crisp nod. And for you, Mr. Park? The usual ribeye? Rare? Dominic stared at her, genuinely fascinated. Yes, thank you, Maya. For the next 2 hours, Maya executed a flawless dance. Beatrice threw every test at her, complaining about the draft, the lighting, the precise temperature of her tea. Maya didn't apologize profusely. She simply fixed the issue with quiet efficiency and offered logical, unapologetic responses. When Beatrice tried to bait her into an argument about modern politics, Maya effortlessly countered with a quote from a 19th century philosopher, effectively shutting the older woman down. By the end of the meal, Beatrice had done something Dominic hadn't seen her do in a decade. She had finished her entire plate in silence. As Maya brought the check, Beatrice leaned forward. You're too smart to be carrying plates in this den of thieves. What's your angle? Rent? Mostly, Maya said, keeping her tone light but firm. And I happen to be very good at my job. Beatrice scoffed, standing up and smoothing her skirt. We'll see. As Beatrice walked out, Dominic lingered. He threw a stack of $100 bills on the table, far more than the bill required. He looked at Maya, his expression unreadable. You have a death wish, Maya, Dominic said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. I have boundaries, Mr. Park, Maya corrected, picking up the checkbook. There's a difference. Dominic let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. I'll be seeing you. 3 days later, Maya's shift ended at 2 a.m. As she stepped out of the back alley of the obsidian room, pulling her coat tight against the biting Chicago wind, a sleek, black town car idled by the dumpster. A massive man in a suit stepped out, holding the back door open. Maya froze, her hand instinctively dropping into her pocket where she kept her pepper spray. Growing up in the South Side, she knew exactly what heavily tinted windows in an alley meant. The back window rolled down, revealing Dominic Park. Get in, Maya, he said. I don't get into strange cars with men who own politicians, Mr. Park, Maya said, taking a step back. If you had a complaint about the service, you should have called the manager. It's not about the service, Dominic said, leaning forward into the dim light. The street lamp caught the sharp angles of his jaw and the deep exhaustion in his eyes. It's a business proposition. 5 minutes. If you say no, my driver takes you home, and you never see me again. Maya weighed her options. She was a practical woman. Her younger sister, Leah, was in her second year of law school, and the tuition bills were drowning Maya. She tightened her grip on her bag and slid into the back seat. The door shut with a heavy, soundproof thud. I need a handler, Dominic said bluntly, wasting no time. For my mother. Maya let out a dry laugh. A handler? You mean a zookeeper? No thanks. I am entirely serious, Dominic said, his tone devoid of humor. My mother is complicated. She has chased away 5 personal assistants in the last 2 months. I am currently trying to navigate a highly volatile real estate acquisition against the Romano family. I cannot afford to be distracted by her demands, her tantrums, or her habit of insulting the wives of my business partners. And you think I can handle her? Maya asked, crossing her arms. You didn't flinch, Dominic pointed out. Everyone flinches. You handled her with respect, but you didn't bow to her. She hates sycophants. She hates weakness even more. You showed neither. Mr. Park, I'm a waitress, not a mob mom babysitter. $10,000 a week, Dominic said quietly. Maya's breath caught in her throat. 10,000 a week. That was Leah's tuition, rent, and a savings account, all cleared in a matter of months. She looked at Dominic, searching for the catch. What exactly would I be doing? Everything, Dominic said, managing her schedule, accompanying her to events, keeping her entertained, and most importantly, keeping her out of my hair. You will live at the estate. You will have your own quarters, a car, and complete autonomy in how you deal with her, so long as she remains physically unharmed. I take the job, and I do it my way, Maya stated, her mind racing. If she yells, I walk away. I don't do verbal abuse. Deal. Dominic agreed instantly, looking incredibly relieved. 2 days later, Maya moved into the Park estate, a sprawling, fortress-like mansion on the North Shore. Her arrival was met with immediate, chilling hostility from Beatrice. So, the waitress thinks she can play at being a lady's companion, Beatrice sneered as Maya walked into the sunroom, carrying a tablet with the week's itinerary. My son's desperation is truly pathetic. Good morning to you too, Mrs. Park, Maya said brightly, pulling up a chair and sitting directly across from her, completely uninvited. Today, you have a fitting at 11 a.m., lunch with the Historical Society at 1 p.m., and I've canceled your 4 p.m. tea with Mrs. Romano. Beatrice's eyes widened in outrage. You did what? You have no authority to cancel my engagements. Mrs. Romano's husband is currently trying to extort your son over the harbor docks, Maya said calmly, scrolling through her tablet. Having tea with her makes you look either unaware or complicit. Since you are neither, the tea is canceled. We are going to an antique auction instead. I hear there's a Ming Dynasty vase you've been eyeing. Beatrice opened her mouth to unleash a tirade, but the logic stopped her cold. She glared at Maya, her jaw tight. You are overstepping. Girl. I'm doing the job I was hired for, Maya replied, holding the older woman's gaze. Shall we go? Over the next 3 weeks, a bizarre dynamic formed. Maya refused to be broken. When Beatrice demanded impossible things like a specific brand of macaroons from a bakery in Paris that had closed 5 years ago, Maya didn't apologize. Instead, she tracked down the retired pastry chef living in New York and paid him to overnight a custom batch. When Beatrice tried to lock Maya out of the car in the rain, Maya simply called herself a luxury Uber on Dominic's black card and beat Beatrice back to the estate, waiting with a hot cup of tea. Beatrice was infuriated, but beneath the fury, a grudging, microscopic sliver of respect began to take root. Maya wasn't intimidated by the wealth, the mafia ties, or the cruelty. Dominic, meanwhile, found himself finding excuses to come home early. He would stand in the doorway of the library, watching Maya and his mother bicker over literature or flower arrangements. He noticed the way Maya's laughter filled the massive, empty halls of the house. He noticed the sharp, intelligent gleam in her dark eyes. And Maya, despite herself, noticed the way Dominic's ruthless exterior softened when he looked at her. The tension in the house was shifting from hostile to electric, but the outside world was not so peaceful. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Maya and Beatrice were leaving a high-end boutique in the city's diamond district. Maya was carrying the bags, keeping a watchful eye on the street, having learned the rhythm of the security detail Dominic provided. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, a black SUV abruptly screeched to a halt at the curb. The tinted window rolled down. Maya's instincts, honed on streets much less forgiving than the diamond district, flared. She saw the glint of dark metal before her brain fully processed it. Get down! Maya screamed. She didn't think. She dropped the bags and threw her entire body weight against Beatrice, tackling the older woman hard to the concrete behind a thick concrete planter. Just as a deafening volley of gunfire shattered the boutique's glass storefront, chaos erupted. People screamed. Glass rained down on them. Maya covered Beatrice's head with her arms, her heart hammering against her ribs, the smell of gunpowder instantly filling the air. When the SUV's tires squealed, speeding away, Maya slowly lifted her head. She was covered in glass dust, her knee bleeding, but she was alive. She looked down at Beatrice. The formidable, terrifying Mafia matriarch looked pale and shaken, her designer hat knocked askew. Beatrice looked up at Maya, realizing that this waitress, this girl she had tormented for weeks, had just risked her own life to shield hers without a second of hesitation. Are you hit? Maya asked, her voice tight, frantically checking Beatrice for blood. No, Beatrice whispered, staring at Maya with a completely new expression. The ice had finally cracked. I am unharmed. Before Maya could reply, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Dominic. The war hadn't just started. It had just come to their front door. And Maya was no longer just the hired help. She was in the crosshairs. The wail of police sirens was drowned out by the roar of 4 armored SUVs swarming the street. Before the vehicles had even fully stopped, the doors flew open. Dominic Park stepped onto the shattered glass of the Diamond District, his face a mask of absolute, terrifying fury. He didn't look at the bullet-riddled storefront. He didn't look at his heavily armed security detail securing the perimeter. His eyes locked instantly onto the concrete planter, where Maya was currently tying a silk Hermes scarf tightly around a jagged cut on Beatrice's forearm. Mother, Dominic breathed, dropping to his knees beside them. His hands hovered, wanting to check for injuries, but afraid to cause pain. Then, his dark eyes snapped to Maya. Her white blouse was covered in dust. Her knee was bleeding profusely, and there was a shallow, angry graze across her cheekbone. I'm fine, Dominic, Beatrice snapped, though her voice lacked its usual venom. She looked at her son, then deliberately placed her uninjured hand over Maya's. I am breathing because of her. She threw me down before the first shot was fired. Dominic stared at Maya. The air between them crackled, heavy with unsaid things. He reached out, his thumb gently brushing the dust from Maya's uninjured cheek. His touch was burning hot against her cold skin. You took a bullet for my mother. I tackled your mother, Maya corrected, her voice shaking slightly as the adrenaline began to recede. The bullet missed us both. Now, get us out of here before the police start asking questions I don't want to answer. Within 20 minutes, they were back in the fortified safety of the park estate. The house doctor was immediately summoned, stitching Maya's knee and bandaging Beatrice's arm. The sunroom, usually a place of quiet reading, was now a war room. Leo Sullivan, Dominic's right-hand man and chief enforcer, stood by the window, his jaw tight. It was the Romanos, boss. It has to be. After we blocked their harbor deal, they're sending a message. Dominic poured a glass of scotch and downed it in one fluid motion. Wipe out their docks. I want every warehouse they own in ashes by midnight. Stop, Maya said loudly. The room fell dead silent. Leo stared at her as if she had grown a second head. Nobody interrupted Dominic Park when he was giving a kill order. Maya pushed herself up from the velvet sofa, wincing slightly as her knee throbbed. It wasn't the Romanos. Dominic turned to her, his brow furrowed. Maya, you need to rest. I need you to listen, she interrupted, limping toward the center of the room. The Romanos are flashy. They like statements. If they wanted to hit your mother, they would have used a bomb or a dozen men. This was a drive-by, sloppy, desperate. But more importantly, I saw the driver. Leo scoffed. Through tinted windows moving at 40 miles an hour? Sure you did. The window rolled down just before the barrel came out, Maya said, her photographic memory kicking into high gear. She closed her eyes, visualizing the chaotic microsecond before she moved. He was gripping the steering wheel. White male, late 30s, scarred left eyebrow. But it was his hand that stood out. He was missing the top joint of his pinky finger, and he wore a heavy gold signet ring with a rampant lion crest. Leo's face drained of color. Dominic's expression turned lethal. Declan O'Bannon, Dominic whispered, the name tasting like poison. The O'Bannon Syndicate was supposed to be their strongest ally in the West Side Territory. They had broken bread last week. Are you absolutely certain, Maya? Beatrice asked from her armchair, her sharp eyes fixed on the younger woman. I served Declan O'Bannon a medium well fillet at the Obsidian Room exactly 1 month ago, Maya said coldly. He complained about the wine vintage and tapped that exact ring against his glass for 10 minutes straight. I never forget a face, and I never forget a bad tipper. Dominic looked at Leo. Call off the strike on the Romanos. Lock down the estate. As Leo scrambled to make the calls, Dominic walked over to Maya. The anger in his eyes was replaced by a dangerous, simmering intensity. You just saved us from starting a war with the wrong family. Consider it part of my 10,000 a week, Maya said, trying for a smirk. But her legs suddenly gave out as the shock finally set in. She didn't hit the floor. Dominic caught her, his strong arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. He smelled of cedar, gunpowder, and expensive scotch. Maya looked up, her breath catching as she found his lips mere inches from hers. You are entirely too reckless, Dominic murmured, his voice a low vibration against her chest. And you are entirely too heavy, Maya breathed back, though she made no move to pull away. From the corner of the room, Beatrice watched the exchange. For the first time in her life, the matriarch didn't sneer at the woman in her son's arms. Instead, a slow, calculating smile spread across Beatrice's face. The revelation that the O'Bannon Syndicate was plotting a hostile takeover sent shockwaves through Dominic's organization. But knowing O'Bannon was guilty and proving it to the city's criminal commission were two different things. If Dominic moved against an ally, without undeniable proof, the other families would turn on him. He's backed by someone political, Maya said 3 days later. They were in Dominic's private office. Maya was going through financial ledgers while Dominic cleaned his sidearm at the mahogany desk. Oannon doesn't have the capital to absorb your port operations unless a city official is fast-tracking the permits. Alderman Thomas Sterling, Dominic said grimly. Sterling oversees the port zoning, but Sterling is a ghost. He never meets with Oannon in public. Maya paused, her finger resting on a column of numbers. Yes, he does. He just doesn't do it as Oannon. Dominic looked up. Explain. 3 months ago, a Mr. Black rented the VIP dining room, paid in cash. I poured the champagne. Mr. Black was Declan Oannon. His guest was Alderman Sterling. They celebrated a forthcoming merger, and Sterling mentioned a numbered offshore account in the Caymans. Maya looked at Dominic, her eyes shining with sudden realization. Oannon is hosting his annual winter solstice gala tomorrow night. Sterling will be there to collect his first payment for the hit on your mother. If we can get the account number from Sterling's phone, we can trace the money directly to Oannon, Dominic said, piecing it together. But O'Bannon's security won't let my men anywhere near the VIP lounge. They won't let your men near it, Maya corrected. But they will let your date. Dominic froze. Absolutely not. You are not going into the lion's den. It's too dangerous. Dominic, I know how these men operate when they think the help isn't listening, Maya insisted, stepping closer to his desk. I've practically been invisible to men like Oannon my whole life. Let me go in. I can clone Sterling's phone. I said no, Maya. Dominic slammed his hand on the desk, standing up. You already took a bullet meant for my family. I will not risk your life again. You don't own me, Dominic, Maya fired back, refusing to back down. I am doing this to finish the job. If Oannon succeeds, your mother is dead. You are dead. I won't sit in a gilded cage while that happens. They glared at each other, chest heaving, the air thick with tension. She is right, Dominic. They both turned. Beatrice stood in the doorway, leaning slightly on a silver-handled cane. The girl has more spine than half your capos. Let her do it. Beatrice looked at Maya, her eyes gleaming with ruthless approval. But if you are going to walk into Declan O'Bannon's house on the arm of my son, you will not look like a waitress. You will look like a queen. The next 24 hours were a blur. Beatrice took absolute control. She brought in private tailors, jewelers, and stylists. When Maya finally stepped out of the dressing room the night of the gala, the entire manor seemed to hold its breath. She wore a custom, floor-length gown of liquid obsidian silk that clung to her curves before flaring out dramatically at the train. The plunging neckline was elegant, but the true masterpiece was around her neck. Beatrice stepped forward and fastened a heavy, blindingly brilliant diamond collar around Maya's throat. The Park family crest, Beatrice whispered, securing the clasp. Generations of blood and power are in these stones. Wear them, Maya. Let them know exactly who you belong to. Maya looked in the mirror. She didn't look like the girl struggling to pay her sister's tuition. She looked lethal. She looked like royalty. When she walked down the grand staircase, Dominic was waiting at the bottom. He wore a midnight blue tuxedo, looking like a dark god of ruin. But as Maya descended, all the dangerous edges of his persona vanished. He stared at her, utterly captivated, completely undone. He offered his hand. You look devastating. Try to keep up, Mr. Park, Maya smirked, taking his arm. The Winter Solstice Gala was held at a sprawling, snow-covered estate in the suburbs. The ballroom was packed with the city's corrupt elite. The moment Dominic and Maya walked in, the music seemed to dip. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Declan Oannon, holding a glass of champagne, spotted them. His fake smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he recovered, walking over with his arms wide open. Dominic, I didn't think you'd make it, Oannon boomed, especially after the tragic incident downtown. How is your dear mother? Surviving, Declan. As always, Dominic said, his voice smooth, but his eyes dead. O'Bannon's gaze slid to Maya, lingering disrespectfully on the diamonds at her throat. And who is this stunning creature? You've been holding out on us. Maya, she said, cutting in before Dominic could speak. She extended a perfectly manicured hand, flashing Oannon a brilliant, utterly fake smile. It's a pleasure, Mr. O'Bannon. I've heard so much about your hospitality. O'Bannon kissed her knuckles, completely unaware that he was holding the hand of the woman who had ruined his assassination plot. For the next hour, they played the game. Dominic mingled, drawing the attention of the room, while Maya subtly tracked Alderman Sterling. She found him near the private card rooms, sweating profusely and clutching his encrypted mobile phone like a lifeline. Maya waited until Sterling ordered a scotch from a passing tray. Timing it perfectly, she stepped into his path, causing a minor collision. Sterling fumbled, dropping his phone onto the thick carpet. Oh, I am so sorry, Maya gasped, dropping to a crouch to retrieve it. In the span of 2 seconds, she slipped a tiny, custom-built cloning drive provided by Leo into the phone's charging port, waited for the green flash, removed it, and handed the phone back to the flustered politician. Watch where you're going, Sterling muttered, grabbing the device and scurrying away. Maya stood up, her heart pounding, the data drive safely concealed in the palm of her hand. She caught Dominic's eye across the room and gave a subtle nod. They had it. The proof. But as Maya turned to head toward the exit, a heavy hand clamped down on her shoulder. Leaving so soon, sweetheart? O'Bannon's voice hissed in her ear. Maya turned around. O'Bannon wasn't smiling anymore. He was staring at her face, his eyes narrowing in sudden, horrifying recognition. I know you, O'Bannon whispered, his grip tightening painfully on her bare skin. You served me at the Obsidian Room, and you were the one in the alley. Maya's blood ran cold. The trap was sprung, but she was caught in the teeth. The string quartet in the corner of the ballroom was playing a classical rendition of a modern pop song, the sweeping cellos completely masking the sudden, terrifying drop in Maya's stomach. Declan O'Bannon's fingers dug into her collarbone, right below the heavy diamond crest of the Park family. You think you're clever, bringing a spy into my house? O'Bannon hissed, his whiskey-soaked breath hot against her cheek. He began to forcefully steer her toward the heavy velvet curtains that led to the private billiard rooms, his smile plastered on for the oblivious guests around them. Dominic is a fool, and you are going to bleed out in my basement. Maya didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't know how to survive the South Side. She had the data drive digging into her palm, and she knew exactly where Dominic was standing. Mr. O'Bannon, Maya said, her voice dropping to a deadly quiet register. You're missing a piece of your pinky finger. Do you want to lose the rest of the hand? O'Bannon laughed. A cruel, dismissive sound. Feisty. The boss's mother must have taught you. He never finished the sentence. Maya shifted her weight and brought the razor-thin, 4-inch stiletto heel of her Christian Louboutin pump down onto the arch of O'Bannon's foot with bone-crushing force. O'Bannon gasped, his grip loosening just enough for Maya to violently twist out of his grasp. At that exact second, the ballroom doors slammed open, not by guests, but by Leo Sullivan and a dozen of Dominic's heavily armed enforcers. The string quartet stopped with a screech of bows. The glamorous crowd froze in a collective wave of terror. Dominic was already moving. Before O'Bannon could recover from Maya's strike and reach inside his tuxedo jacket for his weapon, Dominic crossed the floor in 3 massive strides. He grabbed O'Bannon by the lapels and slammed him brutally into a towering ice sculpture of a rampant lion. The ice shattered, sending frozen shards and O'Bannon crashing to the marble floor. Dominic placed his polished Oxford shoe heavily onto O'Bannon's chest, pinning him down. He didn't draw a gun. He didn't have to. The pure, unadulterated violence radiating from the Korean mob boss was enough to keep O'Bannon's own security detail frozen in place, especially with Leo Sullivan's men aiming directly at them. Maya, Dominic commanded, not taking his eyes off the bleeding man beneath him. The drive. Maya walked forward, her obsidian silk gown gliding over the shattered ice. She handed the tiny silver flash drive to Leo, who immediately plugged it into a tablet connected to the ballroom's massive overhead projection system, a system O'Bannon had intended to use later for a presentation on his legitimate real estate ventures. The giant screens flickered to life. Alderman Sterling, who had been cowering behind a champagne fountain, let out a pathetic whimper as his encrypted text messages were broadcast in 10-foot-tall letters for the entire city's underworld to read. Sterling, The harbor zoning is stalled. Park won't budge. Oannon. He will when he's grieving. Hit the mother. Make it look like the Romanos. Sterling. Payment? Oannon. Cayman account ending in 8,842. 500K now. 500K when the old witch is dead. A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. In their world, there were rules. You did not attack a civilian family member, and you certainly did not frame another family to start a war. The representatives of the other syndicates in the room, men who had been breaking bread with Oannon hours prior, now stared at him with lethal disgust. Oannon was excommunicated in a matter of seconds. His own capos slowly lowered their weapons, stepping away from him. He was a dead man, walking. You broke the code, Declan, Dominic said softly, his voice echoing in the dead, silent room. You targeted my mother. You brought violence to my doorstep. And you thought you could outsmart me. Dominic looked up, his dark eyes locking onto Maya. But you couldn't even outsmart my date. Dominic stepped off Oannon, turning to the highest-ranking member of the criminal commission present in the room. The Park family claims Oannon's territories as recompense for this treachery. If anyone objects, speak now. Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Dominic held his hand out to Maya. She took it, her fingers intertwining with his. Without another word, they turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving Oannon to the mercy of the men he had tried to manipulate. The ride back to the estate was quiet, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away to leave a heavy, exhausted intimacy in the back of the town car. Dominic kept Maya's hand in his thumb gently tracing the knuckles. You lied to me, Dominic murmured, breaking the silence. Maya looked at him, raising an eyebrow. Excuse me? You said you were a waitress, Dominic said, a slow, breathtaking smile spreading across his face. You just dismantled an entire crime syndicate with a pair of heels and a flash drive. Maya leaned her head against his shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her. I'm a very good waitress, Dominic. I told you, I handle things. When they arrived back at the estate, the sun was just beginning to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. They walked through the grand double doors only to find Beatrice waiting for them in the foyer. She was dressed in an immaculate silk robe, her injured arm resting in a sling, flanked by a tea cart. Beatrice looked at Dominic's bruised knuckles, then at Maya's dust-covered gown and the Park family diamonds still resting securely at her throat. I assume, Beatrice said, her sharp eyes missing nothing, that the Oannon problem has been resolved? Permanently, Mother, Dominic said. Beatrice nodded slowly. She walked over to Maya. The older woman reached out with her good hand, gently adjusting the diamond collar on Maya's neck. It was an incredibly intimate, maternal gesture that made Dominic's breath hitch. Your sister's law school tuition has been paid in full for the remainder of her degree, Beatrice stated, her tone entirely casual. And I have terminated your employment as my handler. Maya blinked, stepping back. You're firing me? Don't be dense, girl. It doesn't suit you, Beatrice scolded lightly, though a rare, genuine smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. You cannot be my employee while you are wearing my family's crest and sleeping with my son. It crosses professional boundaries. Dominic choked on a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck, while Maya actually blushed. From now on, Beatrice continued, her voice softening just a fraction. You will sit at the table, Maya, not serve it. I expect you both for Sunday dinner. Do not be late. As Beatrice turned and walked back up the grand staircase, Dominic pulled Maya into his chest, wrapping his arms securely around her waist. Well, Maya whispered, looking up at the terrifying, beautiful man who had just rewritten her entire destiny. I suppose I need to buy some new clothes. I hear the dress code at your family dinners is violently strict. Dominic laughed, capturing her lips in a kiss that tasted of danger, victory, and a promise of forever. Don't worry, sweetheart. You handle it perfectly. Did Maya's fearless takedown of the criminal underworld leave you breathless? If you loved this thrilling story of power, loyalty, and a waitress who outsmarted the mob, hit that like button right now. Share this video with your fellow Mafia romance, drama addicts, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another heart-stopping chapter. Comment below. What was your favorite twist?